Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week I am joined by Andy Jenkins. Andy is an executive headhunter in the energy sector. Andy, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, Michelle. Pleasure to meet you. So I've been in exec search for about 28 years, I think. Started out in engineering, moved into energy fairly early on. So I've been looking at senior level leadership hiring across the whole of the energy spectrum, across all of the corporate functions for a very long time. And till recently, I was doing that for BP in Asia, covering everything from BP Band E, which is kind of senior level leader, 15 years experience-ish and up, right up to board. And then set up my own company with a very good friend of mine, also ex-BP, following the latest BP restructure, which happened in December. There's another one happening right now, but it seems to be an ongoing thing. But we've been focusing on energy and commodities, and it's been a busy time. So things are going okay.
I mean, that's really good that things are going really well for you. I was going to ask you, what is the difference between a standard recruiter from a company rather than a headhunter? Because they work slightly different, don't they?
They do. There's two main kinds of recruiter out there. And the difference really is whether they work on a retained basis or not. So for a typical role that's fairly standardized, let's say you're looking for a particular type of accountant, there's lots of similar accountants, you can easily advertise that role. It's not too hard to find people. I mean, it's always hard, but it's relatively easier if it's something that's fairly standardized. And so you can just do that on a contingent basis. So you get a placement, you get a fee. But for anything that is more complicated, and this happens in the energy sector all the time, because you're looking for, say, a project director with very specific experience, like deep water experience, and they need to have operated at a certain level of capex, and they need to be comfortable going to Angola, that kind of thing. In that case, you are looking at a much narrower pool of people, and you need to talk to everybody. And generally speaking, these aren't people who are going to be on LinkedIn flicking through the job ads looking for something new. They're going to be very happy and settled where they are. They're going to be halfway through a project. It's going to be difficult to get them out. And for that, it's a much deeper level of work. You need to have, probably for a typical project director, you're having 100, 150 plus conversations. So an exec search firm will get paid up front for that. But your original question was, what's the difference between someone who works for, say, a BP and someone who works for an agency? The difference is much less, actually. So the work I was doing for BP was almost exactly the same as the work I was doing for Corn Ferry. It only got challenging when it would be something confidential. So say there was a restructure, there's someone in seat, we need to have 3 good replacements lined up for that person before we can say to them, look, we think it's time for you to move on. Then I can't contact people as Andy from BP because they'll know exactly what I'm up to. These are very specific roles. I can't go into too much depth about the position without giving things away. So for those, we tended to use headhunters, and we'd have a non-disclosure agreement that they would share with the candidates before they'd tell them it was BP. But other than that, it's broadly very similar. You have the equivalent of agents at BP who are doing professional hiring at the lower levels, and then you have executive hiring at the more senior end, and that tends to be retained search. Lots of networking, lots of outreach, lots of LinkedIn, lots of other sources, but really making as many friends in the industry as you can who will point you in the right direction. The other thing about exec search is you can't depend on things like LinkedIn. It seems like you look at LinkedIn and the whole world is there and here's all their experience, but actually people who are really good don't even bother going on LinkedIn, or they don't update their LinkedIn profiles, so you can't find them because they're happy where they are. They don't want to be headhunted or move jobs, so finding them is a lot trickier.
Okay, so how did you get yourself noticed? Say I have maybe a mid to senior engineer and they're wanting to move up the career ladder. How would you get yourself noticed via a headhunter, or would they have to still stick with the agencies or recruitment or the recruiters from the internal operators? Or how would it work?
Yeah, really good question. And there's a little bit of a gray area as to which phase of your career you transition from working with a traditional sort of agent through to an executive search company or a headhunter. Generally speaking, the more senior you are, the more specialist you are, the fewer ads you see for your kind of job, the more likely it is that a headhunter can help you versus an agent. Getting yourself noticed is probably, I would say, that the most obvious route is to get your LinkedIn profile really up to date and really searchable and really clear. Make it very obvious what it is that you're doing. Because one of the things that you encounter as a headhunter when you've got 100 people to talk to, there are maybe 50 people on that list who look like they might be good for your job, but you're not 100% sure. These are the people who haven't updated their profiles or just quite vague or don't go into much depth about what it is that they do. And I've got to look at that as there's a price to pay for me as a recruiter. If I talk to one of those people and they're not right, I've invested half an hour or an hour talking to someone where I'm not really going to get a result. So I'm better off talking to the people who are closer. Then you're more likely to get a call if your profile is detailed and sharp and up to date. And LinkedIn is a kind of a blunt instrument, but it is the most obvious place to get noticed, I think, for executive recruiters.
Okay, so how would you get your LinkedIn profile on point so that you would get contacted more?
I think by just being very detailed, put in as much as you can about what you've been doing. I suppose put in all the aspects about your job that you like the most and that we'd like to see in your next job. And that will make sure that you're getting approaches for the types of things you're interested in. If you make it too broad, you'll get approached about a lot of other things besides, and they might not be interesting enough. And then I guess things like attending conferences and networking and introductions will help you as well. Because if you think of your career ladder as kind of a pyramid, when you first start out, there's a lot of jobs around. You can try different things. You haven't really specialized yet. The further you go up, the narrower the pyramid becomes, the fewer those opportunities are. They're great when you get them, but they're harder to find. So you tend to, I find candidates by talking to person A, they refer me to person B, they refer me to person C, and then finally person D is the perfect candidate for my job. It's the same if you're looking for jobs at this sort of level, I think. Ask people, go to conferences, ask people, do you know someone I can talk to who might know people who operate in this sort of area, who might have my next role, and go through that route. The tricky thing about applying for things online or applying for jobs is that it's so easy to do now. So if you're a recruiter on the other side and I've posted a really nice job ad, I'll wake up the next morning with 300 applicants. Now, one or two of those will be amazing, but I've got to look at the other 298 before I can find them sometimes. And you can be the perfect candidate, but if you're the third, 300th person to apply, you might never get seen. So it's a better way to operate, just directly person to person, work your way through people's networks. Takes a bit more effort, but tends to yield better results.
Yeah, because I do see that because there is quite a lot of people that get, including myself, they get maybe apply for a job on LinkedIn, but then get contacted directly via an agency, even though they've advertised the job advert. Is that quite normal?
That sounds a bit unusual. If you're applying for a job on LinkedIn, it should only go to whoever's posted the ad.
Mm-hmm.
If the person or if the entity posting the ad is an agency, then yeah, they might have your CV online and on file and consider you for other things. But it's weird if you've applied to a company and then a different company contacts you about a different role on that basis. That shouldn't really happen.
Okay. Are a lot of agencies and recruiters using AI to narrow down the search for their candidates?
Yes, I can confidently say that I think all of them will be at the moment because it can be a really huge time saver. It's starting to become a bit of an arms race actually because at first I think you can use something like Claude to go through your pile of 300 CVs and read them all so you don't have to and pick out the best ones. And that used to take hours and hours and hours of your time. But it works both ways. And so now the candidates are applying for the jobs and telling the AI to write my CV to make me look like the perfect candidate for this job and then write me the perfect cover letter. And so you're starting to get back to a situation where you say, okay, here's 300 applicants, Claude, which ones are the best? And it's like, they're all amazing. So it still works very much in our favor. I think Claude has been doing some amazing things for our company. We've got a Claude brain, which lives in my business partner's house. It's full of all of our intelligence, all of our job specs, all of our information. And Claude, I think, since we started up, does the job of about 3 people. We've not needed to hire anyone yet, even though we're really, really busy, because so much of the grunt work can be done by Claude. So yeah, we're very happy with it, but things are changing quite quickly. So who knows where we'll be in another year's time.
Yeah, I know, but then what would your advice be to anybody that's looking for work, that's maybe having to go through, their CV has to go through a AI tool?
My advice would be to humanize the process as much as possible. Talk to people, real people. Now I don't even know sometimes if someone's emailed me, they've put it through some AI and it's not even a human that I'm talking to. You reply to them, you get a very nice reply back. I mean, one thing I've noticed is the length of people's emails. I mean, as a recruiter, you get a lot of speculative applications. We get tons of people reaching out all the time. And the length of those intros has tripled, I think, in the last 6 months. It used to be, hi, I'm looking for a job. I've got A, B, and C skills. Can you help me? Now it's like very creative, very elaborate paragraphs about how all sorts of sophisticated things they've done. And it doesn't take long before you just go AI, AI, AI. And, it's sometimes hardly worth reading because it's too much information. And then you get people who've figured that out and they'll subtly say, okay, make this not look like AI. And you get a more sensible sounding approach. And then you reply to it, you get an instant response and you think, seems a little bit suspicious. But if you have a person in front of you, if you have a person on the phone, you're dealing with a human. And I think that makes things a lot easier.
Okay.
So if I was looking for a job, my advice would be to reach out via LinkedIn, via email, through your network, find as many real humans as you can. And generally speaking, you'll find the quality of help will be a bit higher.
Yeah, I think I agree. What do you think about if you apply for a job and then contact the hiring manager? Because you can see that now on LinkedIn. Is that a good idea, or do you think it's overstepping?
I think that's a good idea. There's nothing wrong with sending a polite note. And it does work on me as well. If I posted an ad, I've got a mountain of applicants, and then one person will email me and say, hey, look, I think I'd be really great for this job. And they might be, number 275 in my list. And so they'll jump to the front of the queue. I mean, I suppose if everybody starts doing that, it kind of devalues it a little bit, but it shows a little bit of extra initiative. Because the thing about LinkedIn that's amazing is how easy it makes your life. So it's so easy to apply for a job with just a click. And that means that everybody can apply for that job. And so you get good people and you get people who aren't even remotely qualified or anywhere near, but you get so many of them because they can go through LinkedIn and apply for everything. So, a little note, just setting out your relevance and your interest. Keep it short because recruiters are always really busy. If they're doing a good job, they've got a lot to do. And the shorter, the punchier, just introduce yourself. This is why I'm relevant. Let's talk. Yeah, I think that's worth doing for sure.
I mean, that's really good advice. Do you have to have one standard CV or a few standard CVs for different types of jobs you're applying for? Or do you need to tailor your CV to each individual job advert that you're going to apply for?
I think there's probably a bit of a spectrum there, but tailoring your CV, I think, is always worth the effort. It's a lot less effort now that you can use AI to help you. But I think the more time and effort you invest in a particular thing that you found, if you're applying online, can only help you. And it sets you apart from the people who have one generic CV who've applied for 100 jobs that day. It doesn't necessarily guarantee success, but I think as long as it lands on the right desk in front of the right person, it probably helps as well if you're you read through a job ad and at first glance you think, I'd be a fantastic candidate for that job. Start working on your CV, you might realize, oh, actually, I've got a couple of gaps there. I've got a gap here. This probably isn't going to work out. And you've saved yourself a lot of time in applying, interviewing, thinking, researching, so it's worth, I would always say it's worth tweaking. Depends how much time you have. But if you can afford the time, then I would think it's worth doing. But, I suppose it also depends on the specific job. Some jobs are more complex than others. Your profile, you've got some really interesting projects that you've worked on, like the stuff in the Arctic. I'd love to ask you all about that. If you find a job where you need some of that experience, you're going to be head and shoulders above another candidate who's got generic project experience, and highlight that in your CV and explain why. That should jump out to people.
Okay. That's excellent advice. I was going to maybe bring it back to the younger graduates. Do you have any advice for them coming out of university seeking their first job?
Oh gosh, that's a very tough one. I've got a 9-year-old and I'm trying to work out what to advise her what to do with her life, because things are changing so quickly. It seems like there's this whole sort of doom and gloom scenario about AI is taking all of our jobs, there's going to be nothing left. And I feel really tough for the kids coming out of uni now, because they've also, generally speaking, borrowed a lot more than our generation had to. And you're starting out in an environment where asset prices are insanely high, houses are insanely high, everything is so difficult, wages are low, taxes high, and you've got this ginormous debt pile, fewer jobs. It just seems really, really tough. So I don't think the AI situation is proving quite as dark as, it seems to make common sense, right? That even for our little company, AI has replaced probably an employee or two. We might be hiring a grad of our own were it not for Claude. So I've seen it firsthand. But it seems like a lot of people are becoming extremely productive. And the way I see it is a little bit like when Excel came on the scene. There used to be hundreds of thousands of accountants. Excel appeared, and really with Excel you can do the job of 10 accountants with a huge piece of paper and a pencil and a rubber. But all that happened is we still have the same number of accountants, but they achieved 10 times as much stuff. And saw a good podcast the other day talking to a software engineer who's in San Francisco at the moment. And he's saying, software engineering, all these kids have worked really, really hard, come out of uni, and there's no software engineering jobs. What a terrible situation. He went, it's actually not that bad, because what's happened is all of the software engineers who experienced have tons of projects on the back burner they would love to find the time to work on, but they've not been able to. And now you have all this AI that can write code for you, and it's enabled them to just become super productive. And all of those projects are going and they're running through, they're doing much more complex stuff. Software is just improving exponentially, and everyone's working really hard. But all of that said, for a fresh grad with no experience, what do you do? And I think I don't have the answer, because it's a big challenge, but I would probably default to my earlier advice and say, meet as many humans as you can. Try to get away from, because they're even using AI to interview grads now, I understand. So you can apply for something and a robot will contact you, and then a not real person will interview you and make a decision about whether you should go forward to meet a human. And for me, I'm glad I'm not in that situation. That sounds terrible. That's really tough. I would try to go to as many events as you can, meet as many people as you can, make as many friends as you can. It's going to be tough, but you only need one break. And, I think it's recently for us, when we started out our company, we've got all of our contacts are at BP. So all the work we were hoping to do is at BP, but BP has the longest procurement process of any company I've ever come across, and we're still in it. So 6 months down the line, all of that stuff, we thought we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to have a ton of work at BP. This is going to be great. I don't think we'll get that for another 6 months or another year. But in the interim, what we had to do was go out and find our own clients. And from going from a situation where you're at BP being handed work all the time, nothing to worry about, to going around Singapore in trousers, shiny shoes and a tie in 30 degrees, trying to meet as many people as you can and trying to get work out of people and then getting through their procurement process and getting to the end and then getting work. It feels like an impossible uphill task. And it was really tough, but my partner, Matt, and I kept our heads down, kept working, keep going. Eventually you get a breakthrough. As soon as you have a breakthrough, it's all downhill from there. Everything gets so much easier. The money starts coming in. You can relax, you can breathe. It's less, you almost like, I feel like they can smell the desperation sometimes in those first few months when you're just desperately needing to get something. And I feel like a lot of people have come out of uni and they're in exactly that situation. How do I get a break? And they apply and they apply and they apply and they meet and they meet and they meet and have interviews and interviews and interviews and nothing ever happens. But eventually something will happen. And when it does, all of those problems will just disappear and you've got your career ahead of you and you can keep going. I mean, it sounds incredibly tough, but I think resilience is probably the only way at the moment.
Do you think if someone who is out of work is resilient enough, something will happen? Because a lot of people that maybe think that, oh, I've been out of work for a couple of months or whatever, maybe 6 months, it can really get to you. It can really knock your ego.
Funny, there's a quote popped up on my phone a few minutes ago. I don't know where it came from, but it said, if you never give up, you can never fail. But I'm not sure that's entirely true. You know, you can run out of money. You can, you know, it can be incredibly tough. But I think eventually just keep going, keep meeting people. And it feels like it's easy for me to say from the other side of a, 28-year career. My first job was a struggle, but it's nothing like as much of a struggle as some of the guys are going through at the moment, I think. I mean, keep your options open. Think about other locations. Leave the country. I think Asia is doing a lot better than Europe at the moment for jobs. Singapore is very busy. Places like Malaysia, India is really busy. All of these are big decisions, but maybe look to Australia. I think their economy is in reasonable shape. But it seems certain things in certain locations are tough. Like getting into finance in London, I hear, is really hard at the moment. Used to be a lot more open doors than there are now. So I guess, I wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up. I had to give up on that career. Maybe look at some alternative routes. Just get a foot in somewhere.
Okay, because as an engineer, predominantly, you would think somebody in finance would have an easier time to get work.
It depends. I mean, engineers are always in demand, especially in energy. It's a good sector to be in. I remember before I joined BP for my interview, I did some research, and they were talking about how hard it is to find graduates to join the energy industry. This is 5 years ago. But I did a little bit of homework on it and found out that the oil and gas industry is less popular among graduates than the insurance industry, which blew my mind. I assumed that insurance would come very bottom of everything, but no, oil and gas is, most graduates don't want to work in oil and gas, and I completely see their point of view on that. I would like, I joined BP in the hope, when I joined, it was a very interesting time for BP because they're talking about, okay, we're going to pull out of all of our upstream stuff, eventually not all of it, but a big chunk of it, and invest that money in renewables, hydrogen, onshore wind, offshore wind, biofuels, solar, all that stuff. And I thought, what a great idea. That's an awesome thing to be part of. I can understand that we still need hydrocarbons for now, but let's take that money and put it into renewables. That would be brilliant. They've gone the other way now. So you might find it easier to apply for an oil and gas company than a tech company, for example, if you're willing to be open and flexible on your sector. I think probably, you start out with a dream job and a dream career, and this is what I want to do. Sometimes you've got to be a little bit flexible to get your foot in the door, or sacrifice some part of that, get 2 years work experience behind you, and then your options become much, much wider. Your first job is always the hardest.
I was actually going to agree with you of what you were saying about the energy sector, more or less the oil and gas. I mean, I have interviewed and I've interviewed for the podcast and also interviewed for a number of jobs in the oil industry, and a lot of managers are saying the same thing. They can hardly get graduate engineers. That they think they're lucky stars, so to speak, that they were able to get a graduate engineer to come and work for them. So it is maybe not such a popular industry to work in, but whether you agree with the drilling and the environment or not, I still think you still need that sort of industry going forward, even though you might not agree with it.
Absolutely. I think we're gradually, humans are gradually working their way through this. We need energy for the time being while other things develop. Is oil and gas going to be the same in 50 years as it is now? Hopefully not. Is it also necessary? Yes, absolutely. And I think part of the reason the energy industry is struggling to find good engineers is because they now have an enormous competitor in the form of the tech industry building data centers. And they've realized that, we need to build billions of data centers, and there's a handful of engineers who can do that stuff. And the next best engineer to build a data center comes from oil and gas. People who've worked on refining, people who worked on complicated, sophisticated chunks of technology with lots of pipes and valves and systems and water and things like that. That's a modern data center, basically. So they're stealing all the engineers from oil and gas, and it's a much more attractive sector for the kids as well. For a graduate, and you've got a choice of working for BP or working for Microsoft building data centers, it's a no-brainer, really. You probably get paid more at Microsoft these days as well. Although the oil and gas is always paid well, but that's a huge competitor. So and also something to look at even for you if you were looking for something, another big project. They could use you, I would think.
I think it's very competitive because I think a lot of people who maybe aren't a lot of jobs in the oil and gas or locally to where they are maybe trying to get work in the data centers. I think it's very competitive.
It's not something I've spent a huge amount of time in because it's very competitive with recruiters as well, and all of our experience is energy. But I have noticed huge numbers of jobs. I have lost candidates to the data center industry. I've tried to put them on a project for an oil and gas company, and they've said, "Sorry, I've got a better offer." So it probably depends which part of the world you're in as well. I think data centers in Asia are a pretty big deal at the moment. There's lots in South Africa as well. Maybe in the UK. I don't know. The UK does have a lot of data centers, but I don't know how prolific they are versus some other locations at the moment. It's anywhere where the cost of energy is low, the cost of water is low, the cost of land is low, is a magnet for building huge data centers. And that probably doesn't describe the UK in many ways, or a lot of Europe.
No, I don't think so. I have seen quite a lot of data center jobs advertised, but yeah, they're all remotely, and yeah, yep, maybe it's something that we can all look into if we're struggling with the oil and gas jobs. So I was going to ask you, what advice do you have for a newly qualified graduate coming into just trying to get their first job?
There's a few variables. What are they graduated in, and what do they want to do? I find people fall into two camps. You have people who start out their whole life with a plan. They do the right GCSEs to get the A levels they want, to get into the degree they want, to pursue the career that they want. And others who have no clue. That's what I did. I just did economics because I liked it, and I wasn't bad at it. But I still came out with no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And then that gave me a lot of options because I just applied for everything. This is before all of this online stuff, so I think I probably had an easier time. But I didn't have a plan, and it kind of I let fate decide in a way. But for a graduate now, it depends. If you're trying to achieve a certain thing, what are your goals? Are you trying to get a job doing X? Do you have a career plan? If not, what can you consider? And I think you're probably in a better place at the moment if you have fewer constraints on what you're looking to do. If you've got a good degree in finance, it gives you a huge amount of options. You can apply for every industry, not just banking. Perhaps that's the original plan A, but good finance people can get jobs across the industry. Marketing just depends what's expanding, what's not. Economics is a fairly sort of generalist catch-all. Are you thinking about a particular person? Or?
I'm thinking more like, people coming in that maybe want to come in and be engineers, but they maybe not want to, I don't know, maybe they don't want to work in the oil and gas.
Yeah, I would think technology would be a pretty strong place, but engineers, you need them everywhere, wherever there's investment. I think the UK, like public sector projects, aren't what they used to be. HS2, I think, is still winding down. There's a huge project for carbon capture, the Northern Endurance Project.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joint venture with BP that's up in Teesside, and I know they're hiring engineers, and it's the oil and gas, but it's the other way around. They need people who understand reservoir engineering, but backwards. So they're pumping carbon in instead of sucking oil and gas out. And there's other renewables projects, wind and solar around the UK, but maybe look elsewhere in the world if you can.
Mm-hmm.
So this UK project should be the first of many of these CCUS, and that would be a great thing to get into and become a specialist in. That's a career for life. If it takes off and does well, you can spend the rest of your life putting carbon back in the ground. You can have exactly the same, because the thing I've always loved about the oil and gas industry is the amazing careers that people have. Like, look at the places that you've been to and the projects that you've worked on. It's just those opportunities don't come working in a bank. You're just chained to your desk all day working in an office. It sounds quite dull. And I think the engineers tend to be quite creative, open-minded, curious people. And so being sent to the Arctic to build an LNG plant is super interesting to an engineer. And then, all the places people used to go, my old boss used to say, God puts hydrocarbons in godforsaken places, because of all the locations you can be sent to build things. I kind of wish I'd done that myself. I really do. But like I said, I didn't have a plan. Going back in time, I think I would probably try to do what you've done rather than what I did. But not that I've had a bad time. It's been a great experience, but it's easier to plan in retrospect, maybe.
Yeah, but then you can also say, and thanks for the compliment, actually, you can almost say that the job that you do could literally change somebody's life, because you're helping them get a job, and people would be so grateful because you're helping them move forward, just in maybe just a small way. So I think being a recruiter would be, it would be maybe, I don't know if I was going to say that it was going to be more boring. It probably won't be, but I think it's more life-changing. I think
it's I agree, and that's the really wonderful part of the job, when you get someone a job that they're really, really excited about and they're so grateful, and that you've solved your client's problem or your boss's problem at the same time. So when you get to the end of the search and you've spoken to 100 people, you found that one person, they get that one job that they've always wanted, or at least they've definitely wanted for the last few months. They get the right offer and everyone's happy. That's great. There's a lot of effort that goes into that, and you also disappoint a lot of people along the way, because for every person that gets a job, there are 3 or 4 people who've been in that process who also really wanted the job and they don't get it, and that's a big letdown for them. But I think any human at work actually impacts all the other humans in many more ways than they sometimes think about. You keeping people safe on a huge engineering project, which then provides energy to a city, you probably benefit more people in one go than I have my whole life. So, I think if you sit down and think about anything, even if you're an accountant in a bank, the decisions you're making on a day-to-day basis are keeping things moving. It's making sure capital is in the right place. It's making sure the right things get done. And, everyone's working hard together to achieve things and move humans along wherever the destination is. Nobody really knows, but I think we're gradually getting easier and easier lives. So yeah, it's even working in oil and gas, I think I can see the negatives. Like for me, I really want oil and gas to disappear. I've got a daughter. I want her to have a nice planet to live on. I want her to have a nice life. And I worry a lot that we're going to have some serious problems as a civilization, possibly sooner than we think. But also, we need to get around. We need to move stuff. We need power. We're not going to achieve anything. No one's going to build an offshore wind farm if we don't have oil in the first place. And in order for us to make that transition, we need energy. So I think you can see the positive in almost any career path. If you're using your brain to the maximum of your ability and you're enjoying what you do, 99.999% of the time, I think you'll be making a positive impact.
I agree. I do agree. And I'm going to end things there. So that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Andy for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening and see you next week.